Okay, Kevin.
Recording in progress.
All right, welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Grimsby. I'm going to first introduce the committee members and staff, if I could just have them acknowledge or wave for the screen. So we have Danielle Beck, Danielle, Adam Mottershead, Adam, Herb Nobes, and myself, Kevin Antonius, as chair. We're missing this evening Dylan Bailey, our fifth committee member. Staff members present this evening is Walter Basic, Assistant Director of Planning. Hi, Walter. And Michaela Bray, our Assistant Secretary Treasurer. Michaela, who'll be running the PowerPoint and the meeting this evening. So I'd just like to make a brief announcement regarding live streaming. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are live streamed by the Town of Grimsby. Individuals and media may be audibly and or visually recorded during this meeting. As a reminder, all electronic devices are to be in silent mode during our committee meeting. So I'll outline the procedures first for everybody in attendance here, and then we'll have you wait in the waiting room while we go through the individual applications. If you are a delegate for that particular one, you'll be left on the screen. So for the purpose of the Zoom meeting, applicants will be placed in the waiting room until your application is heard. As I mentioned, the purpose of the application relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given the opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to speak. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions attached to it. Copies of the decisions can be mailed to the applicant or agent and to any other person who files a written request to Michaela. Any person, corporation, or public body has the right to appeal either the decision itself or any conditions to those decisions to the Ontario Land Tribunal, or OLT, within 20 days of mailing of the decision of the notice for consent to sever and within 20 days of the minor variance application notice. Everyone present here this evening will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. Agencies commenting on these conditions, agencies commenting on applications may request that certain conditions be imposed, but voicing your objection to those conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. All members of the committee have viewed the properties on the agenda this evening and are familiar with the lands that are subject of the applications here tonight. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Does any member of the committee have a pecuniary interest in the matters before us this evening? Just shake your hand. No. Herb, you got your hand up? I don't know if you meant to have it up.
Yes, yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I just want to ask everyone in attendance if there's anyone that is offended with the hat that I'm wearing today. If they are,
anybody?
I will take it off.
Brett said yes, that means you're offended, or yes, you're okay.
Okay.
I think everything's good.
Oh,
thanks for
you.
clearing that, Herb.
That's very politically correct of you to ask.
Yes. Request for withdrawal or adjournment. I believe we had a request for a deferral.
Yeah.
Michaela?
One request for deferral.
Why don't we deal with that one then first before we get into the agenda? So I've got a motion before we get to the minutes approval. Do we have a mover and a seconder to resolve that submission A3321 for number 3 Nassau Drive be deferred? Do we have a mover and a seconder on that? Danielle and Adam? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Thank you. It was carried. So that leaves us with 2 applications this evening. And then the next item on the agenda then is the minutes of the meeting held on November 16th, 2021. They've been circulated. Do I have a motion, a mover and a second to resolve that the minutes of the meeting held November 16th, 2021 be approved? Mover and a seconder, Adam. And seconder, Danielle. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Was carried. Okay, then we'll get into the notice of motion that's on the agenda. We acknowledge that we have a notice of motion. We don't have to deal with it at this time. Adam, did you have a question? Or I see your hand up.
Actually, a small.
small correction to one word actually in the third paragraph.
Sorry, you went on mute, Adam, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just wonder if I can make a small, just actually the third paragraph. It should, I put prescribed format, it should be prescribed format.
Okay, so noted. We'll make that correction, or Michaela can make that correction. I don't think we have to have a notice or a motion on that. So we've got the notice of motion. Adam, you'll be bringing something forward. According to the clerk, we just have to acknowledge it. It's on our agenda, so it's now been included for the next meeting. So then we are going to deal with the two applications before it. The first application is for 25 Bartlett Avenue. So I'll give Michaela a minute just to allow the other ones to be put into the waiting room, the other delegations, and then we'll deal with this one. So we have a PowerPoint first by Michaela, and then we'll open it up to questions from the committee, and then members of the other delegations may comment or ask questions if they'd like. So Michaela?
Yep. I think it's just Brent who's going to the waiting room.
All right, Brent, we'll see you in a bit.
Okay. See the presentation? Is the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right. So as Kevin noted, there's two applications tonight. The first one tonight is application A3121 for 25 Bartlett Avenue. Minor variances are being requested to parking for rental apartments, and specifically these would be affordable apartments for adults experiencing disabilities. First variance would be to permit 23 parking spaces for 20 units, whereas 30 parking spaces are required. Second variance is to permit parking spaces outside, whereas the parking spaces are required to be located within the building. So here's the site plan that was submitted, showing the parking proposed. Here is the aerial photography that shows the context of the area as well as the existing conditions on the site. And then two photos again of the existing conditions on the site. So the picture on the left is taken from the driveway along Bartlett Avenue. Shows the parking kind of behind the current building. And then on the far right of that photo, you can see Central Avenue. So correspondence from the agencies listed on the screen. So from the Town of Grimsby Planning Department, planning staff believes that there are, they have no objections to the proposal because it meets the 4 tests set out in the Planning Act. However, there is one condition that planning staff request, and the condition would be that the reduction in parking only apply to affordable rental apartments for adults experiencing disabilities. From Niagara Region, they had no objections. From the Conservation Authority, they had no objections. From the Escarpment Commission, no objections. From the town's Heritage Department, no objections. From CN Rail, no objections, and from Grimsby Power. And that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Michaela. Is the owner or their representative here this evening? Would you like to elaborate on the application and the request?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Andrew. I'm a planner at SHS Consulting, and I'm here today on behalf of my client, Christian Horizons Canada, who's the applicant who cannot be here today. The current proposal is to develop 20 affordable rental apartments, as Michaela mentioned. 18 of these will be 1-bedroom units and 2 will be 2-bedroom units Also, as per Michaela's presentation, they will be targeted towards members of the Grimsby community, particularly adults experiencing disabilities. The units will be targeted towards affordable incomes. By locating parking to the side and rear of the site, it strengthens the streetscape along Bartlett Avenue and Central Avenue, and also reinforces the built character, and in my opinion, improves the streetscape based on existing conditions today. The site is also served by on-demand transit, which reduces the need for parking on the site. A parking study conducted by IBI Group in September of this year looked at a similar size affordable rental apartment building in a similar community context, Binbrook and Hamilton, and found the proposed number of parking spaces for 25 Bartlett Avenue would be sufficient to support the demand from the 18 one-bedroom and 2 two-bedroom units, including demand for visitors. The parking study did not find that there would be any spillover effects of the proposed parking rate for on-street parking on Central Avenue. In this way, we believe the impact of the proposed minor variance should be considered minor and meeting the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaws. By allowing parking to be located outside, the proposal also reduces the amount of structural concrete required to build the project. As concrete is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions, surface parking to the rear of the proposed building would actually be environmentally friendly alternative. Furthermore, exterior parking also significantly reduces the cost for constructing rental apartments and allows the project to actually be affordable to a greater share of Grimsby's population. So by allowing exterior parking, the project becomes financially feasible. Insofar as allowing new affordable rental units to be built, this would actually permit exterior parking and ultimately to a desirable outcome for the community as a whole. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have for this application.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any questions from the committee members first before we open up to members of the public if they'd like to comment? Herb?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you. Is there any elevation views of this proposed building? Is the first question. The second question is the existing building going to be used at its present location? And my third question is the entrance on Central Avenue, is that the existing entranceway that's presently on Central Avenue, or is this going to be a new one? And Andrew, my fourth question is the existing parking from the driveway goes to the south of the property, towards the property line, and the driveway is close to the building. This shows the driveway closer to the south property line and the parking towards the building. Is there going to be a relocation of the entranceway on Bartlett Avenue? And my final question is, this is a building for people with disabilities, yet I only see 2 parking spots allowed or shown on the plan for parking for disability. Now, I don't know if there's anything in our bylaw for buildings with disability requiring additional parking for handicap. Walter might be able to clarify that for us. That's all I have right now here.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I think you were muted.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Herb. I'll let Andrew answer the first, I guess, 2 or 3 questions, and then Walter can address the last one. Andrew?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Herb, we do have some elevations, although I don't have them on my desktop at this moment. However, the current proposal is also with Walter and the planning department undergoing a site plan review. So I'm sure we could have something shared with you in relatively short notice. Regarding your second question around the location of the building, we will not be retaining the existing structure. However, we will be retaining the similar building footprint in the same location. So in the northeast corner of the lot to minimize impacts on the neighbors to the south and west. Regarding the entrance on Central Avenue, there will not be an entrance to the parking from Central Avenue. However, there is currently proposed to be a driveway for waste pickup and loading from Central Avenue that would be in approximately the same location as the driveway today, subject to feedback from the planning department. Regarding the access from Bartlett Avenue, again, the driveway will be in approximately the same location. Although once coming off of Bartlett Avenue within the site, there might be some small changes in terms of the location of the parking that you noticed. So in terms of the flow of an impact on traffic on Bartlett Avenue, there shouldn't be any adverse effects. And it should be the same experience for drivers today as there will be in the future. I hope those answers your questions.
And then Walter, did you want to address Herb's last question regarding handicap spaces or barrier-free spaces?
Yes, in terms of barrier-free spaces or accessible spaces, the zoning bylaw does not differentiate between uses. It's a ratio based on how many parking spaces are required, and a certain percentage of them are required to be barrier-free.
So I take it, Andrew, I guess the general question is the parking study that IBI did was based on a similar development. Was it operated by Christian Horizon with like adults with disabilities, like similar to this one? Or because I take it that the request overall is justified that you're not, the tenants typically aren't driving or as much as a typical like apartment building. Is that the whole premise here for the reduction request?
Correct. And I can let my colleague Milan, who's also on the line today with us, elaborate. But in short, the development that was compared, out of Binbrook was a seniors affordable rental housing complex of a comparable size. And so they looked at the usage rates and, finding that typically seniors apartments in general, and this one specifically, have a lower usage rate. It was comparable in that sense to what would be expected from adults experiencing disabilities. And I believe the parking study was attached to the meeting minutes, to the meeting agenda for tonight's committee meeting. However, just as a recap, I think, they found if you extrapolated the parking rate that was found at that complex to this proposal here in Grimsby, the proposed parking would be more than sufficient to capture not just resident parking, but also visitor parking as well.
Thank you. Who else had their hand up? Adam?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, the consultant did answer my question with the waste collection. I had a question about, I guess, the percentage of the housing that's going to be dedicated to those disabilities, 100%, or is it a lower number?
Andrew?
Through the chair, if I may defer this question to my colleague Milan Vincent on the line as well.
Lynn?
And this may be a point of clarification even for planning. So Christian Horizons is a developmental services agency. The building that we're proposing to build is what we like to call an inclusive and integrated community that will be targeted to adults experiencing developmental disabilities. So although their disabilities may also be physical, the aim is around the developmental and cognitive disabilities, and they're folks that might be able to live independently. In terms of what percentage of the building will be targeted to this population, at this time, we're looking at supporting up to 6 people that experience developmental disabilities that are supported by Christian Horizons. The balance of the units will be affordable housing, whether they're on this Niagara centralized waiting list or through a waiting list that will be maintained by Christian Horizons. The comparable site, which is in Binbrook, has many points of comparison because it is also an affordable housing project. It is targeted to seniors. And furthermore, Binbrook, as Grimsby has on-demand transit. So their transit situation, in addition to the level of affordability and the project size were all very relevant to what it is that we're proposing on this project here.
Okay, thanks. And actually, just one more question I had is, Christian Horizons actually going to be the owner of the building? So I'm just wondering if they're just, how can I say, like a long-term lease, or what will happen if, say, 20 years down the road, they outgrow the facility? What would happen to the condition that was it?
So I really wish Christian Horizons was here for that. Unfortunately, Dave Petcock, who's the Director of Community Engagement, has had a family emergency. This project is the first venture for Christian Horizons in the affordable housing sector. This is not a group home. This is a different way to approach housing for adults experiencing disabilities. Christian Horizons has been around since 1965. They have been operating various types of housing for over 55 years. I think that we know that Christian Horizons as a strategic direction are headed into affordable housing as a strategic direction. I don't expect that we will be seeing anything 20 years down the line that would require a transfer of the housing outside of this realm.
But just to confirm, Eileen, that they own it, correct?
They will own it. They will own. It is not a long-term lease, so they will. Right now, they are the agent on the land, but the land is intended to be gifted, and they will own the land and the building upon completion of this project.
So I guess that kind of leads the first comment that Adam brought up is the planning department suggesting a recommendation regarding the reduction in parking be tied to the apply only to affordable rental apartments for adults experiencing disabilities, but there's no ratio or percentage of units or anything applied, like there's no specific number in there. So would this be too general, or this, like Walter, I'm just wondering if this would have to be tied down, because by the sounds of it, only 6 of the 20 units are going to be with adults with disabilities, but the rest would just be affordable. So is this condition specific enough? I guess, would that answer, would you be able to answer that, or want clarification on that in terms of a more defined condition?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, were you asking me that question or?
Yeah, sorry, I was asking you that because the planning department put that condition in, but it doesn't really, it's a general condition regarding affordable rental apartments for adults, right? So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, again, this is something that we'll probably need to get into more detailed discussion with the applicants about. Again, we don't necessarily have a concern with the reduction in parking. It was our understanding that the entire building was going to be used for that purpose. So, you know, if the committee might want to consider how to structure that condition so that it suits the proposed use a little better. And again, is it the intent that there will be at minimum 6, or what's the long-term goal there?
Yeah.
Is it they only have 6 clients at this time, but it may increase over time, or? Right.
So that would be one. I mean, I don't have a concern with the reduction either. I think the study was good and comparable, but I just found it interesting that I was under the same understanding as you. It was 100% disability units versus 6 out of 20. I mean, it makes sense if you want to make units affordable, you've got to reduce the cost of construction somehow, or reduce the parking requirements. So these are all good things to do and encourage for the community, but it's just the wording of that might need to be tightened. So I'm going to go back. I think Adam's hand is down. Herb, did you have another question before I go back to Mylene? Had her hand up. It's gone. Herb, did you have another question?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Some more additional questions as a result of what has been said. It seems to be a little misleading, and I think everyone else is feeling the same way when you say this building is for people with disabilities, but it's only for 6 people with disabilities. The entire building is not. So it's sort of misleading there, that and that's why we're having troubles with the parking and so forth. So I think with the my feeling is, before I make a decision, I think that conversation should be between the Christian Horizon and the planning department on how exactly this parking arrangement is going to be maintained in the future. Also, my other concern is there doesn't seem to be setbacks shown on the building that is here. So Walter might be able to help us out with what the minimum setbacks are going to be for this building, and not having them come back in a future date for another variance for setbacks and so forth for this building. It would have been very nice to have the elevations and some more details on how this building is going to be looking and located. That's all for now.
But I think you've got to assume that it meets the bylaw in all other respects then, if it's not shown. I mean, we really should be just dealing with the variance in front of us now, the reduction of parking, which Mylene, did you want to explain a little further on that, those comments and questions?
Yes, and I think that the one thing I would request is if it's possible to have the language just remove make it purpose-built affordable rental housing, and remove the target population as being the condition. That would be welcome from our end. As mentioned before, the comparable building that in the parking study is not adults experiencing disabilities. It is purpose-built affordable rental housing. And this is the intent of this project. So through you, Mr. Chair, if this is acceptable to planning staff, we would appreciate that amendment to the language.
Okay, so whoever makes the motion on the request can make that amendment at the same time then, if they feel so moved. Adam, did you have a question? You had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was just wondering if Walter can answer a question going back to the 2015 or 2016 OMB decision on the property. Was the original intent of that building to be as it is today, or was it a different plan altogether? Because I noticed that I think as part of the settlement agreement, there was the provision of the parking, the 21+9.
Yeah, just to give you some background through you, Mr. Chair, there was a decision. The application was originally submitted for an official plan amendment and a zoning amendment in 2015. There was a subsequent OMB decision which tied down the setbacks on the site. The setbacks are, in many cases, significantly greater than the OMB decision. Like one example would be the westerly setback abutting the neighboring single-family home was set at 9.6 meters, whereas the proposed setback now is in excess of 27 meters. So it's the number of units is the same. The units are substantially smaller. The height is the same. The northerly and easterly setbacks are approximately the same. But because the units are substantially smaller, the footprint of the building is substantially smaller, probably a third smaller than what the original building that was approved for the site is. So the site-specific zoning included a requirement to provide parking underground. That was primarily because there wasn't significant amount of room up outside of the building because of the size of the building to accommodate surface parking. So they had proposed a significant amount of the parking to be underground or within the building itself, and the driveway access was off Central Avenue. Right now, the current proposal is to have all surface parking. The building footprint, I don't think is big enough to provide parking within the building because it's the footprint is substantially smaller. And all of the vehicular access is off of Bartlett Avenue. There's no vehicular access for parking off of Central at all, whereas almost all of it was off of Central previously, with the exception of visitor parking spaces. So that in a nutshell is sort of like the difference between the original OMB approved site and the site that we see before us now. The previous plan, the 2015 proposal was for a free market condominium. And this proposal here is for affordable housing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Any other questions or comments? Did you want to respond at all, Mylene or Andrew, before I open it up to, I believe is it Andy and Carol, delegations on this? Oh, sorry, Danielle. Danielle, go ahead.
Thank you. I just had, when the time comes, I had some suggested wording just for that condition. I just wanted to put it out there, and it was, sorry if I do not pronounce your name correctly, but it was similar to what Mylene had suggested as well too. So, but when the time is appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So why don't we open it up to Carol?
Yes.
First.
First of all,
sorry, I should back up. Do you mind just giving us your name and address for the record and where you live in relation to the property? That helps the committee.
okay.
Thanks, Carol.
303 Central Avenue, Unit 10. And our backyard faces the south of the apartment building. So it's across the road from our backyard. We're Unit 10 in a subdivision here of townhomes.
Thank you. Go ahead. Did you wish to have comments or questions for the committee or for the applicant?
Well, first of all is, if it's going to be low rental, why is it being parking from 30 to 23? What about visitors? What about people that are going to work in the building, helping, like say the janitor or people like that? Because I noticed that the back here, there's an employee's door. So obviously, employee's door, they will have to go into the building in that door. Where are they going to park? Are they going to park on Central here?
How many employees?
And how many employees would be in there? Do I keep going? Or
Yeah, go ahead. We'll let you go through your questions, and then we'll have either planning staff or the applicant respond.
Okay. Will they park on Central Avenue here? Since all these townhomes were built between Park and Baker Road by the tracks there was quite a number of townhomes built. Central Avenue is very busy, very busy. And if the parking is there, first of all, I just want to say we were there at the meeting a number of years ago, and we did bring up the garbage truck again, and I will bring it up now. How is the garbage truck going to pick up the garbage? Because it seems to be like a 10% grade on that hill. Are they going to just have one bin by the looks of this map that we were sent? It just so happened we went to see our daughter on Saturday in Binbrook, and we were looking at the parking. Now that building you said is not for disabled people, it's for low income. There was quite a few cars in that parking lot. And then we happened to drive to go out, and there were so many pails of blue. Here in Grimsby, we have blue boxes. They had blue pails they had the green pails. What's going to happen here? Is that garbage truck going to back in, back out? How is all the garbage going to be picked? It's just going to be an accident waiting to happen, because garbage trucks in our subdivision, we have 3 come in on garbage day. I'm just looking at my notes here. There's no room, there will be no room to turn around for the garbage truck. Just a second. Sooner or later, we're going to need a stoplight at Central and Bartlett. And getting back to the parking, I don't know. I don't know, where are the extra people going to park? Where are the visitors going to park? You want to cut back parking spaces. Can you answer me on those? If it's a business, is there going to be people go in and out? Like I say, where are they going to park? The employees.
Okay, so I will first maybe regarding the number of employees, Mylene, maybe you can answer that, and the garbage truck. Parking on Central is a Walter question. So Mylene?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I'll let Andrew fill in the blanks here, but just to refer back to the comparable property that was in the parking study, that did identify that I think it was 0.85 spaces per unit was sufficient, including visitors. We are over 1 space per unit, and so we should be providing more than sufficient parking, including visitors. We are not looking at an inordinate amount of staff coming on site, so they would be included in the visitor count. And so right now, from what we can tell and through our best efforts, we do not see any overage in parking. There is no, just to kind of point of clarification, is the access from Central Avenue. First of all, there's no vehicular access to the parking area from Central Avenue. There will be a door that will be to a lower level, which will be amenity program space for tenants, because we are looking at building community and we are encouraging that type of gathering among tenants, and we're providing those opportunities. So that is not a staff entrance, but rather an entrance for the tenants to be in a common amenity space. So just to kind of provide that clarity. In terms of garbage and recycling, all of those comments are being addressed through the Public Works comments in the site plan approval process. And we will make sure that those are addressed accordingly. Today, our variance application is in relation to the parking requirements.
Thank you. And then Walter, the question regarding parking on Central Avenue.
I don't recall what the question was regarding parking on Central Avenue.
Well, she asked because she was of the opinion that there was going to be a shortage on the subject. Would people be parking on Central Avenue, or could they park on Central Avenue?
I believe there is parking permitted on Central Avenue. Is that correct?
Yes.
There are a few spaces that people can park on Central.
Right.
Why are they going to park on Central if you have enough parking in the lot around the apartment?
Well, I think their argument is there will be enough on site. They still have 23 spaces and there are 20 apartments, so they're over 1 per unit. And based on the study they provided from the planning consultant, that one showed that there was more than adequate capacity over the various time periods that they studied to show that there's more than adequate parking on a similar facility. So they're suggesting that people wouldn't be required to park on Central as there is enough on site based on this plan. Is that your interpretation, Walter?
Yes, that's exactly what I believe the position of the applicants is.
Okay, Andy, did you wish to add some comments or questions for the committee or the applicant? It's Andy Crockett.
Yes. So I'm
Go
the
ahead.
neighbor on the west. Just wanted to ask, like, I'm just kind of surprised that is it correct that the planning department in making the decision on the parking was not aware of the sort of percentage breakdown of the different types of tenants in the building, being 6 disability and the remainder low income? Were they unaware of that at the time they made that parking allocation decision?
Walter?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, our understanding was that the entire building, like I said previously, was to be for adults with disabilities.
Mhm.
Okay, so from my perspective, and I'm pretty familiar with Christian Horizons, and I think they're a good organization, but it is the first venture into affordable housing. And so their track record would be kind of a new venture for them as well. So I don't have a confidence level that the parking study used, how applicable it is to this situation, particularly when the planning department is unaware of the allocation or the type of allocation of residents in the facility. So I'd just like to state that and have that dealt with properly. My second question is more of a personal one, in that my house now has 13 new parking spots adjacent to our bedrooms, our bathroom, and our sunroom windows. I understand that the gentleman from the planning department indicated that the setback is greater. I'm assuming you're referring to the setback of the building relative to the property line as opposed to the parking spaces relative to the property line. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. The proposed building, thank you. The proposed building is 27.3 meters, I believe, from your lot line, whereas the approved setback was 9.6.
Right. Yeah, I think I remember that older study. It was, or that older engagement. It happened before I moved into this property. But so what I'm wondering from that is, because I don't have a plan or an elevation, I wasn't even aware that the new building had been approved. I don't even know the status of it. It's all kind of a surprise to me. But I wanted to know how close are those parking spots to our property line, and what is the elevation? Is it different from what it is now, or is it pretty much the same as the current elevation? Because that affects lights shining into our house, tail lights, just proximity of people relative to our hearing zone, enjoyment of our property. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, again, through you, Mr. Chair, thanks for the question. The setback of the parking spaces that are proposed is approximately 9.6 meters. So it's about the same distance as the approved building with the original application. The applicants, I believe the common lot line is heavily wooded. And I believe also the applicants are proposing additional landscaping on the green space in between the parking spaces and your property. Also, the elevation facing your home, I don't believe there are any windows facing the west side of the site.
Okay, yeah, it's more of the cars that I'm concerned about.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I believe the elevations will be very similar to the existing elevation. So in other words, lower than your grade.
Okay. I don't know if it's a parking issue, but is fencing or the treatment of the property line, is that anything we're aware of at this point? Because that matters to me.
Right. I don't recall offhand with the landscape plan, but I believe the existing vegetation straddles the lot line. So installing like board fencing, privacy fencing as an example, may have a deleterious impact on the viability of the cedars that are there now.
Yeah.
So I think it might be better to leave the cedars, especially with the amount of privacy that they provide you, than take them down just to put a fence up.
You're going to find that when the larger trees are, if they're going to be removed, they're going to leave massive dead areas in the cedars that'll be a real negative to the new build going in, and perhaps the whole hedge.
Yeah, that's something that we're looking at through the site plan process. With
respect to neighbors who are not professionals and would really benefit from an elevation or a conceptual drawing of it, where is that in the process currently?
Yeah, we have building elevations that were submitted with the site plan, and lot grading plans, as well as servicing plans. So if you like, you can contact, I'm trying to think, you can contact Michaela. I think she's the lead planner on the site plan application, and we can provide you with digital copies of those plans if you like.
I would like, yes, we've contacted the building department and we've got nowhere in terms of getting information on this property. To be honest with you, this letter is the first thing any of us, I think, in the neighborhood have heard of this whole proposal. It's almost like it came out of nowhere to us. We're a little bit surprised.
Yeah, if it weren't the way the Planning Act works, we're required to notify neighbors of Planning Act applications other than site plan applications. So if it wasn't for the proposed reduction in parking, it would have been just straight site plan review by staff, making sure that everything's working properly, making sure that all the appropriate buffering is in place, and then council approval. So there aren't any public meetings associated with site plan approvals because it's anticipated that site plans are required to conform to the zoning requirements. So in this particular case, the applicants are asking for relief, and that's why we're going to the neighborhood to notify you, to let you know that relief is being sought from the zoning requirements, and this is
okay. Fair enough. So I guess my opinion then is that the relief sought, and a number of people have rendered the opinion, was based on the facility being a disability group home, which clearly it's not. And I think people were just made aware of that this evening, or it wasn't something in the forefront of our mind. And I think it needs to be reevaluated based on this somewhat new information. And the gentleman in the Santa Claus hat, I think, made a very good point. I'm not accusing it of being under false pretenses, but it wasn't with full information that decision was made. And I'm not questioning the motive, but the reality is that's how it's working out. And I feel like as a neighbor, I'm going to be the one that does not benefit from that. It'll be a negative to me, perhaps. And I would like it reevaluated based on that.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make a point of clarification, Chair. Planning staff don't necessarily do an evaluation of the parking standards. We rely on our transportation engineering technologist that has expert experience in this field, and we rely on his advice when it comes to parking reductions and transportation issues. So he provided comments expressing no concerns with the proposed reduction in parking based on the comparable site that was used in the parking study.
Thank you, Walter. And Herb, you had your hand up. Actually, before you do, I'm just going to have Mylene comment or respond to some of the points raised. I think, Michaela, do you have the ability to put the streetscape on? Because I know this site well, and I'm just looking on my phone on streetscape. I think this is a very well buffered site from the parking from Mr. Crockett, to be honest. I mean, these parking spots, if they're going to be similar to the grade that's there, are well below his grade for a parking space. I mean, it's at least, I'm going to guesstimate 3 to 4 feet, plus the cedars. I mean, that's a pretty good buffer for surface parking, if you ask me.
Michaela, if you
but-
don't have it, I have it up already.
There we go. Thank you. And that's on top of the distance itself. I mean, there's a significant distance. I'm assuming
Michaela,
that
you want to go around the other side. Sorry.
Yeah, I heard the comment, down Central. So I believe Mr. Crockett's on Park, if by the sounds of it, it backs onto this. So if you stop.
On Central.
He's on Central, right there, yeah.
Central, okay. So if you look there, now I heard a comment that the parking would be similar, the building footprint would be similar to the police station that's there now, or the old police station.
Right.
And the surface parking would be similar to what's there now. Does I understand? Is that correct, Walter?
Or very close. I can provide you with the actual dimension
Right.
now, if you like.
So if you go a little further east, Michaela, then you can kind of see into the parking lot towards the southwest. If you go a little further to your left. There, and then turn back. And there you can see it quite well, right? You've got quite a bit of a berm protecting headlights and lights, plus the vegetation on top of that, plus the distance. There, that's a perfect view. So, I mean, those would be headlights shining into the side of the hill. So I don't know, I think we've seen a lot worse cases of proximity issues than this, especially with something that's already in existence. So it would be a similar footprint to what's there.
So
And I think the previous application actually had a 2-story or 3-story condo building a lot closer. So you'd have not only headlights, you'd have people viewing or looking into your backyard. So I don't know. I don't think this is an onerous request at all, in my opinion. I think the study, I know I get the concern that there was a talk about, or misrepresentation, intentional or not, that I doubt it was intentional, that they're all disability, but the comparative study was a rent geared to income house. The units are going to be a lot smaller. We're trying to create affordable housing, 1-bedroom units. I think they're all 1-bedroom with exception of 2 or 3. So 1 unit per, or 1 space per unit, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good ratio. And you've got 3 extra spaces for the 2-bedroom and or part-time staff or a superintendent once in a while. These are all independent units. So I don't think there's care per se on site, but those are just some of my comments. I mean, I do real estate appraisals all the time on these kinds of facilities, and this is a reasonable request in my professional opinion as well. So, Eileen?
Just to clarify about what population is being served, our cover letter to planning staff and our conversations with planning staff and with various members of staff and council speaks to the fact that Christian Horizons is seeking to develop affordable rental apartments, and I quote, including supports for adults experiencing disabilities. So it is including that. But it is not exclusive to that, and it was never intended to be exclusive to that. Furthermore, I want to say again, the parking study, the comparable site, was not a site for adults experiencing developmental disabilities. It was for purpose-built affordable rental housing, which is what we are proposing to build and to make available on this project. Just to speak to Christian Horizons' experience in affordable housing, you're correct. It is a new venture for them. However, this is why they engaged a firm like us, which is SHS Consulting, and you can look us up. We are affordable housing professionals. Our business is affordable housing, and over the last 20 years, we have developed over 100 projects of affordable housing across the province. We work with all municipalities, all regions, and that's our business. And so currently we have over 50 projects of affordable housing in development, various stages of development. And so our professional opinion and being able to identify these comparable sites, that's what we do. So hopefully this will help provide you with some comfort on the credibility of the study, on the credibility of the process, because we're really here to make sure that Christian Horizons is as successful as they possibly can for their long-term direction to modernize housing for adults experiencing disabilities and building communities for them to build success and live independently and with success. And we're working on other partnerships. So just to kind of put that on the table and advise that, it's not a small thing, it is a broader thing, and we are looking at it that way.
You're muted. did.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. And then Herb had his hand up again. Herb?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Right, I'm looking at the plan that was submitted to us. And the parking to the west of the building, I'm just curious why it's not possible to put the additional parking as a double row on that west parking area. You've got one row, you have could have a lane and then parking against the building, facing towards the building. Why is that not possible?
Miley, or Andrew, perhaps. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Herb. I think there's a couple things. The first of which, we're under the constraints of the zoning bylaw for the town of Grimsby, which mandates a certain amount of soft landscaping on the development of any site. And in this case, we are within that, and we've kept within that because it's important to make sure that we don't hardscape and just pave over the entire property, particularly because of concerns in this neighborhood, which is established and has established stormwater infrastructure about, overland flows into that. So, if we think about some of the bigger storms we've been getting, in the last couple of weeks, as an example, lots of rain, if we just hardscape at all of it and create a parking lot, it's just going to flow right onto the street and potentially overwhelm the stormwater infrastructure. So by ensuring that we have enough soft landscaping, we ensure that the water, seeps into the ground as much as possible. It doesn't, create flooding on Central Avenue, for example. So, that's one of the constraints we're working under, and one of the key reasons, an intent, I think, of the zoning bylaw and ensuring that there is sufficient soft landscaping, and that's why we were not able to put a second row of parking there. Herb. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Mylene, did you also wish to respond to that? You still have your hand up, so I wasn't sure if that was from before. Or...
That's from before.
No problem.
You got it.
Problem. And then Herb, you had another question or comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just following up on that same question. Through Walter, is the addition of parking facing the building impacting the percentage of soft landscaping that's required? And is there not a storm sewer system that is adequate to take that hard surface runoff into the storm sewer system? Is there not a large enough pipe on either Bartlett or Central Avenue to take the additional runoff from hard surface?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we provide the right amount of parking. I'll give you an example. The retirement facility on the northwest corner of Main Street in Bartlett. What you'll find there is that most of the time, more than half of the parking lot is empty, and that's primarily because our zoning bylaw required significantly more parking than was actually required by the occupants and the employees of the building. So to Andrew's point, it's important that we not overpave, and the more we pave, the more we impact the stormwater infrastructure. The more, and we've seen examples in town where the storm sewers were not able to handle the peak flows, and they overflowed, and there were periods of flooding, and not just overland, but onto people's property. So it's something that we're keen on making sure that we don't provide, we don't pave more surface than we need to, because we know what the impacts are when you do that. Whether or not the infrastructure is sufficient to accommodate an extra 5 or 6 spaces, that's not a question I can answer. That would be something for our Public Works Department. But that's something that we look through through our site plan review process. We rely on the various experts to review the plans and make sure that it's developed properly. But just in general, if the amount of parking that's being provided is sufficient, we generally would discourage the provision of more parking than is necessary, just for that reason. So that's just a general comment I'd like to make. I don't know if that answers your question, but thank you.
Not really, because the bylaw states 30 parking spots. Whether there's 30 parking spots there, the infrastructure needs to take that. So the planning and zoning department, by putting 30 parking spots on there, agreed that 30 parking spots, the storm sewer can handle that. So I'm just
Right.
curious why.
Yeah, you just have to remember when the site was originally approved, the vast majority of the parking was within the building and not outside.
So there was a lot more green space in there. And then you also have to look at the unit mix. The parking bylaw requires per unit, but it doesn't look at the type of unit. So in this case, it's specific to what they're proposing, which are small, affordable units, mostly one bedrooms, in which case one spot per unit is more than adequate. And I think they've proven that in this parking study. So Andy had his hand up again. Andy?
Yes, I'm just wondering, and I don't know the proper person asked, but just generally, did the zoning on the property change from the point of the last application in around 2015?
Walter?
Yeah, the 2015, there were two 2015 applications. There was an application to amend the official plan to designate it medium density, I believe, from low density. And then there's a corresponding zoning amendment to permit the 20 unit condominium building, which had primarily 2 and 3 bedroom units.
And so does the current application and property fit that zoning allowance? It must.
Walter?
Sorry, I was having trouble undoing my mute. Yes, the proposal does fit with all of the requirements of the zoning bylaw, with the exception of parking.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Danielle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back, I guess, to the technicality of what the application is actually about, to Walter and Michaela, the notice that was sent out says to facilitate parking for rental apartments for adults experiencing disabilities. And the staff report was all based on this being for adults experiencing disabilities. Walter, I don't want to put you and your staff on the spot, but I'm not too sure if the recommendations in the report would change, understanding that it's only 6 of 20 units that are specific for adults for disabilities. And Michaela, the last thing I would want is the town to receive an appeal because proper notice wasn't sent out reflecting an accurate proposal. In my opinion, I feel like a proper notice should be recirculated out, reflecting the proper proposal, that this is for adults with disabilities and geared to low income housing, or however we want to phrase it. Because as of right now, I do agree that this notice is a bit misleading, that it does basically state that there are, based on the variances, that there's 20 units and that they're all for adults experiencing disabilities. That's just my 2 cents from a legislative standpoint. And hearing the concerns of the neighbors, I do feel that there is space to accommodate an additional 7 parking spaces on site. But I also do feel that we want to preserve a lot of more of the green space. And site visit, seeing the topography, seeing the grading of the site, seeing the massive berming, I do feel that there's a healthy balance that we need to take into consideration with this site. So I wanted to point that out to the other committee members and get some feedback on that about the notice, and to get, I guess, Walter and Michaela's input on that as well too.
Okay, maybe Walter or Michaela could respond first from the planning department's perspective, and then ask for comment or feedback from the other members. I think we've heard from the concerns from the neighbors, so now we'll ask for comments and questions and get moving on a decision on this application or deferral or whatever the request, whatever the wishes of the committee is first. But I'll let Walter respond first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe the wording in the notice, I believe it's verbatim from the application that was submitted. Is that correct, Michaela? That particular language?
Yeah, I think that language was borrowed from something that was submitted as part of the site plan, but it would be the same application technically.
Right.
I don't know if it came exactly from the minor variance application, but it would have been, I believe.
Right. And having said that, you know, not to answer Danielle's technical question or comment, I believe the comparable that was used in the parking study, I believe it is comparable to what's being proposed. I think Mr. Palumba, our traffic engineer, he looked at the study and he looked at the proposal, or he looked at the comparable, and he felt that it was an appropriate comparable, and he felt that the number of parking spaces that were being proposed on the site were appropriate. So, you know, putting the technical issue aside with regard to the notice, I believe Mr. Palumba's opinion regarding the number of parking spaces will stand.
Okay, thank you, Walter. And you know, I'm of the opinion too. What's the point of making an application or making an applicant go through the extra cost and the impact of parking or paving 7 more spaces, as Herb alluded to? And I get it. It can obviously fit on the site. In fact, he could probably meet the bylaw with respect to setbacks of the parking from the adjacent lot and meet all the parking requirements, pave it over, put 30 spots, and they sit empty. Because based on that study they provided, they don't need that many parking spaces for affordable housing of 1-bedroom units. It'd be an entire waste of money, and it'd be a waste of green space. So why wouldn't you say as a landlord, well, I'll ask for the variance. If I get it approved, I know there's enough for my business operation. If I find there's not, and there's more demand for parking, as a prudent owner, I'm going to provide 7 more spaces so I can charge more rent. Like if there's a lot of demand, I think a prudent owner would then take that space, pave it over, and accommodate the additional parking that his tenants are demanding. But to make them go through that, I mean, it just pushes affordable housing into inaffordable housing, because all of these costs are going to be pushed onto the tenant or Christian Horizons as a landlord, which is obviously going to be pushed onto their supporters. So I'm just not sure the wisdom of adding that additional cost for parking spaces that are going to sit empty and pavements that's going to sit there serving no purpose. I think it's a professionally done study, as about as close as a comparable as you can get for the use. I don't see an impact, with all due respect to the neighbors. The parking will be all contained on site. There's more than adequate screening and buffering from the Central Avenue, Mr. Crockett spot, in my opinion. I think it's a good proposal. I mean, if they want to meet the bylaw, Mylene, I'm sure you can turn around and put the site plan and not request a variance at all, and just pave it over and meet the bylaw and be done with it. But it's not going to help anybody, really, my opinion. I think to Danielle's point, I agree there's probably some misinterpretation that went on with this, but I think the intent, I don't think you're going to add more people to a public meeting by recirculating us, delaying the applicant. Additional cost is going to be involved. We're going to go through the same exercise. I can't see all of a sudden a whole bunch of neighbors coming out because it went from adults with disability to affordable apartment units. That's just my opinion. I think the request is reasonable, minor in nature, and is appropriate development for the use of the land, given what's in front of us. But that's my 2 cents. Adam, did you wish to comment or have questions for us?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with I guess, how the application was advanced. As in terms of the number of parking spaces, I kind of 20 up, but 30, I don't know, it's like a balance in there that can be reached somehow to sort of, just get in the middle where parking, there will be enough parking, not, basically.
Sorry, Adam, you're breaking up quite a bit. If you don't mind just repeating some of your remarks. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
It's not great at times. Yeah, no, just saying, I was comments and as in terms of the number of parking spaces, 23, I think is, but to meet the zoning bylaw of 30 would be more what they would need. So find a balance somewhere.
I think we got your comments. It was 30 is too much, but you're not sure where the right number is. Is that correct? Does that sum it up?
Correct. Yeah, 23, I just have this feeling it's not going to be enough in 30.
So my question response to that would be, we have a parking study and a parking expert providing expert advice, and I'm going to say transportation department, but correct me if I'm wrong, Walter. They've also reviewed this study and feel it's adequate. I guess my comment to you, Adam, where is your expertise in finding the right number if the experts are saying this number is going to be more than adequate? That would be my comment back in response.
I would agree to an extent, but I've looked at the IT parking generation manual, and there's, certain situations where it would be, if you applied the formulas there, there'd be more than 23 that was required. And also they didn't actually provide any Sunday number.
Mylene? Sorry.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. The report does, with the comparable site, does recommend 0.85 spaces per unit, which if we were to apply it to the 20 units, would be 17 units. We are 17 spaces. We are proposing 23 spaces. So already we are 6 spaces more than what the recommended amount would be. So what we trust, and I think I'm addressing what we trust is happening here, is that we have provided that happy medium. We are not at 17, we are not at 30, we're at 23, which is somewhere in the middle and quite close to meeting that exactly medium point in there, which should be more than enough for purpose-built rental in affordable housing.
Herb, did you have another question or comment? And then we're
yes,
going to close it off.
My question is to Mylene, I guess. Was the study from the professional handed in with your application? And if it was, why was it not circulated to the members of the committee?
It was. It's included in our package.
Herb, it's in your package. We did get it. It is the entire study is in there. So I don't know if you didn't have a chance, because we are kind of referring to the study, but did you not look at it or see it in the package?
No, I didn't see it in the package.
Yeah, it was there. It's I'm going to say a 10-page report.
Of the full agenda, page 14 to, I don't know, it's done by IBI Group.
I'll take a look on my email.
Sorry, and through you, Mr. Chair, just on that report, there was only one site that this was in comparison to, and it wasn't a like for like site, just to reference. It was in comparison to geared to seniors living. It wasn't a geared to low income or residents or people with disabilities, which is, in my opinion, a completely different type of occupancy. Seniors living does generally have or yield a much lower occupancy than geared to low income versus seniors, especially out in this area where there is no transportation or transit available. They're going to need to have vehicles. They are going to have visitors. The property in the building is going to need to have maintenance. I just don't feel comfortable supporting a reduction for something that only compares it to one other site, and one other site that's not exactly the same. You know, planning school tells you to compare something that's exactly like for like, you know, apples to apples, oranges to oranges. You don't really compare apples to oranges. And in this instance, in my opinion, you can't have your laws of ratio comparing two different forms of tenure that are not the same and say that it's adequate for justification, in my opinion. At this point, I would be recommending a deferral based on that, to allow the applicant to go back to the drawing board and to work with planning staff. Hopefully maybe provide some additional justification in the parking study. Maybe IBI group can come up with some other sites. This is not the only site in Hamilton that is geared to residents with disabilities. Bimbrook is just this site in Bimbrook isn't even geared to residents with disabilities or geared to low income. There's plenty in the downtown core that is, where they've done significant parking reductions and parking studies. That would be a lot more beneficial than this. However, you're going to run into the issue where transit is available. Burlington has a bunch as well too. Niagara Falls also has a bunch. You're going to have to look, just for me to feel comfortable, I cannot support something and say that this meets the intent of the zoning bylaw or that it's minor. And because there is an active site plan application and zoning is applicable law for site plan, I also don't want to put the applicant in a precarious position and deny it. I want to leave this application open to allow them to come back with an amendment and further information and justification. So I would be able to, and I would like to move a deferral or request maybe that, I don't know how, I've never put a deferral on the table, so I don't know if the applicant has to put one forward or if I request the tabling, but I think it would be best if we table or defer this application for some further information and justification to be brought forward.
Danielle, I'm just going to have Mylene respond, because I think you're incorrect in some of the comparable assumptions regarding that site, because there is on-demand transit in this location and that, but I'll let, sorry, Mylene.
Yeah,
respond.
so just to respond to some of the concerns here. And we're very familiar with many sites in Burlington, Hamilton, and Niagara Falls. So the reason why this site was selected, and it was in collaboration with town planning, who had provided a couple of example sites in Grimsby, but they were market rental and they were much larger. So we proposed this one. And the reasons why we proposed this one, it was because of the points of comparison. So the first point of comparison is that this is a low income and low and moderate income building. It is a 30-unit building. It is a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. It is in a rural turned urban area, close to a Four Corners in a small town, Binbrook. It does have on-demand transit, similar to what this site has. And although it's not geared to persons experiencing developmental disabilities, it is geared to seniors, where the needs and the percentage of people driving their own vehicles is usually quite similar. And so because of all of those factors, this is why this is the site that was selected. You are correct. If we had selected a site in downtown Hamilton, where there's a lot more transit, where you could have more of a mix of persons experiencing developmental disabilities that are living in community. We've completed a project like this. It has no parking, but also it's going to be along the LRT site. So it would be very, very difficult to create that parking justification on a site like this. So this particular site, and we did select just one, because of all of those points of comparison, the availability of proximate amenities, the availability of transit, the target population, the level of income. All of those things are the reason why we selected this this site as the comparable site, and in collaboration and communication with town planning.
Thank you for that. Okay, Herb.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. It seems that the notice of agendas and that are going to the wrong email to me. I've got 2 emails, one for the committee, which all of my correspondence for the committee is supposed to be coming through, but for some reason they're sending the notice of agenda on an email that I do not look at very often. So I just would like to say sorry, it is there, but that's my explanation.
All right. Anyone else? If not, then I can call for a motion. Danielle had the comment that she was requesting a deferral, but anybody else want to first deal with the motion on the table that's been circulated? And that's the resolve that the submission A3121 for 25 Bartlett Avenue to permit 23 parking spaces for the 20 units, whereas 30 parking spaces are required, and to permit parking spaces outside, whereas parking spaces are required to be located within the building. That's the motion, but you can also request, as you're making the motion, that it be approved, deferred, refused, or approved with conditions, Danielle. So does that answer your question? There you go.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Getting back to the garbage, I know it's about the parking, but years ago when you had a meeting at Town Hall, it was brought up also about the garbage truck had nowhere to come in, to turn around or anything. And are we going to, because when we sit out the back here, all we're going to look at is bins and bins and bins. We've never heard any more about the garbage, what's going to happen. Can you tell me, is it going to be walled in, or is the garbage people going to have a problem? Because are they going to be able to turn around, or are they going to have to back out?
I'm going to let Walter answer that, but those would be concerns addressed at the site plan stage. So staff department heads would all be involved in the intricacies of the site plan and how those, whether it's fire department, circulation, garbage pickup, all that's being dealt with at the site plan. So because that's not on the table here, this committee is only dealing with the parking reduction. I'll let Walter briefly comment on that, but we're really going to stick with just the parking issue tonight.
I realize that, but it was brought up years ago and we had never heard anything more after. And when we went and drove around on Saturday to the apartment that is being brought up in Benbrook, we just couldn't believe the number of bins. Couldn't believe. And this is our worry because our backyard faces across the road where if you look on the plan, you've got the bin there, only one bin. Like there's garbage pails galore. I mean, if you're comparing parking, compare other stuff also.
Walter, first of all, it's a different region. So that's the one comment I would have, but maybe you can address some of the other questions briefly, and then we're going to deal with the parking request.
Yeah, thank you. I don't recall what, through the site plan review, I don't recall what the comment, I believe it's going to be private collection. Is that, Maylene, is that correct? Yeah, it's going to be private collection. So the region will not be collecting garbage here. Our preference is always to have the garbage stored internally to the building and then brought out when the waste collection vehicle shows up. There are different types of waste collection systems. There's the big bins where the front end loader comes and picks it up and throws it in the back. There's also Molochs that are, you've probably seen them in Winston Road area in the new development there, where they're primarily below ground, and then the lid is lifted and the truck picks up a bag and all the garbage empties into the waste collection vehicle. So there are different systems that are potentially in use here. This is something that we're looking at intently through the site plan review process, and we will be commenting on. But in terms of how the trucks will be maneuvering, there's only one way. The length of the driveway where the waste would be collected is just long enough for a truck to nose in and then back out. Obviously, the truck would have to follow the rules of the road. You know, it's not backing out onto Bartlett, it's backing out onto Central, although it's a busier road now than it was 10 years ago. It's still a less busy road than Bartlett is. But this is something that, again, we're intently looking at as staff, and we rely on the expertise of our Public Works Department to make sure that you know, the maneuverability is appropriate and relatively safe. So that's something that our Public Works Department looks at. The site plan will have to be approved by council eventually when it gets to that point. But we have had one round of reviews of the site plan, and we will be eventually coming to council with a recommendation. But the site plan process is always staff provide a review. We look at the best practices and look at what our town standards are. And in most cases, we have 1 or 2 rounds, maybe sometimes 3 rounds of reviews where we ask for changes to plans to be made. So again, the plan that you saw was is a first submission plan. So the final plan may be a little bit different, but likely it will be that one driveway where the waste collection vehicle will have to back out, and our Public Works Department will have to be satisfied that that's a safe maneuver for the waste collection vehicles.
Yeah, because Central Avenue is so busy now, so busy, and to me, it's dangerous having a garbage truck back out onto a road that's very busy. And hopefully there won't be a whole list of garbage cans or not bins or whatever sitting outside all the time, because that's us looking at that.
Yeah, again, the method of waste collection is something that we're keenly interested in every application, and something we'll have to come to grips with as staff when we make a recommendation to council.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, thank you. Mylene, did you wish to comment on that quickly?
I just want to say something quickly. That's not something that we would want for you to endure either. So right now we are proposing Moloch. I think that's that underground bin. So there's not going to be bins wheeled all over the place, but that's not something that we want you to endure either. I think we all want to enjoy our livability. And just to speak to future community consultation, we will be engaging with you. Really, the only reason why there's been a delay with it is that we're trying to finalize the land deal and just kind of finalize the gifting agreement and make sure that this is going to continue to move forward. But as soon as that does, like, we will invite you to an open house, and we'll be doing more of a formal presentation showing you exactly what it is that we're building and what we're proposing, and receiving your feedback. Like, we're not trying to keep anybody out of the process. But I just want to kind of do that reach out, and say we'll be in touch. Like, we'll be talking a lot more in the future.
Okay.
Thank you, Mylene. Thank you, Carol. All right, then we have the motion that's been before us. Do we have a mover and seconder on that? Danielle, I'm looking to you.
Sorry, I was just making sure I was unmuted. Yes, I would motion then. This is a hard one, but I do unfortunately just have to go with the information in front of me at this time. And I would be willing, and I feel comfortable and confident to motion to defer this application right now. Just based on the information that was provided with us tonight, the incorrect information on the notice that was sent out, as well as the information that was brought to light this evening, that it was the type of occupants are going to be geared to low income, as well as people with accessibility issues. There's concerns from the neighboring residents about the parking. I feel like there could be some more community consultation that can be handled. I just feel like there could be some more work on this before it comes back to committee with some additional justification before I feel comfortable being able to support this. So my motion is to defer this at this time.
Seconder on the motion to defer, Herb?
Mr. Chair, also I'd like to make a comment on that. When the proposal does come back to committee, that it have elevation drawings with it, so that these areas where the garbage is going to be picked up and so forth can be addressed at that time as well.
But don't forget, Herb, that's not a zoning request. Sorry, that's not a minor variance issue for this committee to deal with. If they meet the bylaw and they go through site plan committee, which is all of staff.
Mr. Chair, we can request information that we need for us to make the proper decisions.
Right. But the information is specific to the parking.
That's why I'm putting that in if Danielle is agreeable with it.
So I'm comfortable and confident with the site plan information that was submitted based on the variances that have been requested. I do not feel that additional information is required vis-a-vis the elevations, just because there's no variances that are related to those elevations. If the neighbors would like to receive copies or view the site plan application, it is a Planning Act application. It is available for public viewing through the town, and I believe they can get in contact with Walter or Michaela to view those documents. I don't think it's something that needs to be provided through this application as part of a public process. So I would like to keep my deferral.
Just the request for deferral.
Correct.
Or motion to defer.
My motion to defer as is.
Seconder on that motion to defer then. Herb, did you wish to keep it as is, or withdraw your seconder of that? So you got your hand up, so
I'm okay to
go ahead.
second it.
Okay. Seconder, any further discussion on the motion to defer? All those in favor to defer then? Oh, sorry, Walter, before I do. Walter, did you wish to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe a point of clarification. I think just a deferral. I don't think there is enough direction in the discussion to really give the applicants direction as to what additional information they should provide when they come back. Is it simply recirculation of the application, stating what the building is intended to be used for? Are we looking for additional justification for the parking? I think the applicants need more direction in that regard.
Danielle, did you wish to?
Completely understand. I would then request that the notice be updated to accurately reflect what the proposal is. The staff report then be updated to reflect what the proposal is. Obviously, then if any recommendations are changed, it would obviously then be brought forward at the next hearing, and that that additional sites be possibly looked into to provide to the committee other examples where geared to low income or people with disability housing has been provided in similar situations, so we can look at what their parking rates are. If they're existing sites, the what's the word I'm looking for, whether or not they've been successful or not, or if they have run into parking issues. I just don't think that one site that has only been constructed within the past, I think it's like a few years now. Mylene?
Sorry, that site is 35 years old, or actually 40, nearly 40 years old.
Thank you. Does that give you enough rationale, Walter? So it sounds like, if I can summarize, Danielle, a recirculation with the correct information on the type of housing, and perhaps an additional justification in a staff report and or parking study is your intent on that? Does that?
Yes, that sounds correct.
Okay, Mylene, did you wish to comment?
Oh, sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
lower my hand through you, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
okay, no problem.
I did intend to lower my hand. I think I just wanted to refer to the fact that that site has been in existence for 35 years. That's all.
Okay, Walter, is that enough?
Yeah, thank you. Through Mr. Chair, you have to remember that our parking analysis was based on the analysis that was done by our transportation engineering staff, not planning staff. And they were satisfied with the comparable, and they were satisfied that the proposed parking is adequate. So it's not something that we would be asking for. Town staff have already indicated that support for the reduction in parking. Engineering staff support of the reduction wasn't based on our description of the proposal. It was based on analysis of the existing facility in Binbrook. So I don't think that it's something that we would necessarily be asking for. So if an additional comparable site is required by the committee, I think it should be expressly identified in the decision to defer, and that would direct the applicants. I don't think it would change our position in terms of the support. So so you wouldn't be necessarily directing staff to do anything because staff supported the application.
Sorry, thank you for that clarification. And then Herb, you had your hand up before we call for the vote. Last comment.
Yes, I would just like to support Danielle on this, that staff should be replying back, whether it's the planning staff or the public works department. If when it's resubmitted to them, they can very well say that we have that the previous comments still apply. So I think we should still get that from the town's experts that is supposed to be looking at this. That's all I have.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't mean to say that we wouldn't respond or provide comment. All I'm saying is that the comments likely will not change.
Okay, thank you.
We wouldn't be asking for additional information.
Okay. Being no further comment, then could I ask for a show of hands or indicate support for the request or the motion to defer? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, if any? Was carried. The next meeting then would be in January, I presume. Early January is the schedule. So hopefully that'll give you adequate time to either add another site, or, as Walter said, beef up the existing commentary back with some of the comments that you've heard back tonight or heard tonight, or amend it to pave it over and meet the bylaw and not come back at all. That's an option.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've got one more application this evening yet. If I could just give us a minute here, Michaela set up, and we'll bring the last applicant in for 17 Nellis Boulevard. Thank you everybody for attending on this one. Herb, just a question then. Did you get the staff report on these? Like the next one coming up too? There was a staff report and no?
No, well, it's in my other email, which like I said, I do not look at. Well, before the meeting's over or before I leave, I'll touch base with Michaela to get the proper information. Somehow they've got 2 emails for me at town hall, and there's only supposed to be 1.
All right. Michaela, did you wish to proceed on this last one?
Yep. Okay, so we have application A3221 for 17 Nellis Boulevard. This is a minor variance to facilitate the construction of a single car detached garage. And the variance that they are requesting is to permit a lot coverage of 28.4%, whereas 25% is permitted. So here is the site plan that was submitted with the application, highlighting the proposed garage in yellow. Aerial imagery that shows the surrounding properties of 17 Nellis Boulevard, just showing the context of the neighborhood. These photos were taken by town staff to demonstrate the existing side yards, as well as give a view of the existing south side yard where the garage would be located approximate. And then we received correspondence from the agencies listed on the screen. So from the planning department at the town of Grimsby, there were no objections, as planning believes the application for the increase in lot coverage meets the 4 tests set out in the Planning Act. From Niagara Region, there were no objections. From the Conservation Authority, there were no objections. From the Escarpment Commission, there were no objections. From the Heritage Department at the town, again, no objections. And from Grimsby Power, no objections. And thank you.
Thank you. Brent, did you wish to add anything to what was presented or explain the rationale for the request?
No, I think the application and the comments that are made speaks for the position that we're taking.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the committee members? Just, you can raise your hand. If you can't get the hand signal up fast enough, that's fine too. If not, then do we have a motion to, I'll read it first, resolve that submission A3221 for 17 Nellis Boulevard to permit a lot coverage of 28.4%, whereas 25% is permitted. If someone could make a motion and the reasons for that, please feel free. Herb, move.
I would like to move that it be accepted because it meets the intent of the neighborhood and the 4 criteria.
4 tests.
4 tests.
Thank you. A seconder? Danielle, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Oh, sorry. All those in favor say aye. I assume you're putting hand up to say aye. Or a comment.
Sorry, I had actually just a quick question to planning. This back meters are set, correct?
Sorry, Adam, you break up again. So I couldn't hear you.
Okay.
Something about meters.
Sorry,
that's all I
get
heard.
a better router. Yeah, I was just looking at the map, and it says the interior setback is 0.61 meters. Is that?
is the setback 0.61 meters on the proposed detached structure is his question, I believe.
That's what I'm looking at.
That's
Yep.
what I'm looking at.
And it's RD3. Is it 1.8 meters supposed to be the setback, or am I incorrect?
Not for accessory buildings. For
Okay.
accessories, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Thanks for that clarification. So then we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor, or sorry, any further questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Opposed, if any, was carried. And there is a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. You're probably wondering what took us so long to get to yours, considering yours took like 30 seconds. But
I guess you saved the easy one for the last.
yeah,
It's a
should have
good thing
reversed
there
it.
it's a good thing there wasn't a half a dozen in front of me like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Anyway,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
And there being no further applications, I believe we're adjourned till the next meeting. Are there any comments or questions about
Sorry, guys.
that? Herb?
Sorry, Michaela, for making your life harder on that site plan.
Herb?
I'll get in touch with Michaela tomorrow on email, and they'll get that other one taken off the records.
Yeah, just send me an email because that was like a pre-made distribution list that I've been using. So whoever made
That must be
why
ancient,
different.
because when we received the new tablets, I changed my emails.
Okay.
So it's got to be 4 years old or more. Okay.
Adam, with respect to your notice of motion, I mean, it was on the agenda. So are you bringing something to the next meeting then on this?
Yeah,
Just a question or comment.
motion will be heard at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anything else before we adjourn?
I just
That's
want to wish everyone safe.
I think it was a safe and happy
Christmas?
Yeah, safe and happy.
Christmas.
We got it.
Will bring me a
I
new
move we adjourn
Thank you, Herb.
before
Good night.
Adam's voice goes totally.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Good night.
Merry Christmas. Adam, you
Merry
need a better
Christmas.
connection
Happy
now.
New Year.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night,
Night,
everybody.
everybody. Good night.